After the United Nations Security Council rejected a Palestinian bid for statehood, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas submitted an application to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Joining me today is Aeyal Gross, a professor of law at Tel Aviv University who also writes legal analysis for Haaretz. Thank you for joining us, Aeyal.
Thanks for having me.
Dennis Ross, a former American envoy to the peace talks, wrote in the New York Times that joining the ICC will produce Palestinian charges and Israeli countercharges, but not alter the reality on the ground. Do you agree?
It's clear that reality will not change on the ground overnight. The question is whether the prosecutor will eventually decide to pursue the cases relating to Israel-Palestine and whether that will have any deterrence effect.
Okay, do you think the prosecutor is likely to pursue those cases?
It's hard to tell. On one hand, the prosecutor may want to sidestep the Israel-Palestine issue like hot potato, not to go on a collision course with the US and parts of Europe. On the other hand, all of the current cases before the ICC concern African countries, and the prosecutor may want to show that it is not just going after African countries and actually dealing with other regions.
And the kinds of charges likely to be brought before the court pertain to settlements and war crimes, including the killing of civilians on both sides. How do you predict the court will handle these issues?
It's, again, hard to tell, but the settlements issue, on one hand, is a political hot potato. On the other hand, it's easily could be considered a relatively easy legal issue because it doesn't bring up some of the complicated questions regarding killing of civilians, for example, proportionality and also complementarity, the principle that the court could not go into an issue if the relevant country investigated it itself. So, for example, when it comes to killing of civilians, Israel can say, we investigated those issues ourselves and the court doesn't have jurisdiction. But whereas settlements are state policy, the whole complementarity issue is not relevant. So it could be, in a way, an easier issue for the court to get into.
Will joining the International Criminal Court then ultimately advance or hinder the Palestinians' aspirations for statehood?
Again, it can work both ways. It could put pressure on Israel to realize there is no longer complete impunity and that issues like settlements or killing of civilians may come to international court and put more pressure on the Israeli government to reach a deal. On the other hand, it can also cause backlash among Israelis, as we have seen now from the response of the Netanyahu government.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, we've seen that the Israeli government says it's going to freeze Palestinian money and reacting very harshly to it. So in a way, it can reinforce reluctance to negotiation with the Palestinians, which already exists. On the other hand, maybe in the long run, it can also remind the Israelis that you cannot continue the current situation forever, and that international law is starting to have more, at least potentially have more force than people imagined it to have once.
Barak Ravid, Haaretz's diplomatic correspondent, wrote that the principle of mutually assured destruction could actually act as a deterrent, preventing both the Palestinians and the Israelis from bombarding one another with lawsuits. Do you expect this will happen?
Not necessarily, because recall that Palestinians were involved in, for example, killing Israeli civilians. Today have the risk of targeted killings by Israel, the assassination policies, or being tried by Israel in military courts. So I think for them, the situation is already so risky, so I'm not sure that The Hague is such a big risk compared to being tried by Israel. Whereas for Israelis, who may be suspected of killing Palestinian civilians or settlements which are against the ICC statute, there's a new risk here. And Israelis, I think, got used more or less to impunity from serious investigations about the actions.
And who specifically would we see then facing the biggest threat? Is it politicians or military leaders?
It could be both. I think generally the ICC usually looks for the big cases and the big people, not just the rank-and-file soldier, but people who are responsible more for the policy.
Okay, and back to the risk facing the Palestinian leaders. I mean, why do you think Abbas then filed to join the ICC despite the risks to the leaders?
Yeah, I think there's been quite a lot of pressure on him to show that he's not too soft towards Israel, and that and given the recent failure of the Security Council decision you mentioned, to try to in a way bypass the Security Council, because the ICC, recall, is not part of the UN. It's actually an independent court, and in a way it's a way to bypass the UN with the Security Council, which is in a way ruled by the US because of the veto power. So it's a different ballgame. Right.
Well, without the US veto at the International Criminal Court, it could really go either way.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Aeyal Gross.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Aimee Amiga, and you're on Haaretz.com.